In this segment, we're going to talk about the roller, pressure, and lift mechanisms on laminating, wide format laminators. This particular one is an Orca, and it uses a air or pneumatic roller lift and pressure mechanism. You can also do it using an electric motor, and also a lot of the machines use a hand crank or a lever to apply manual pressure. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the components on the machine, and then we'll go back, circle back around, and talk about some of the common problems you might see. So with any air system, you're going to be connected to an external compressor most of the time, and where the connection is made, there's usually going to be a water trap of some type. This one actually has a bicycle type valve on the bottom that allows you to drain the water. The next thing is going to be the air solenoids. This particular machine has two, one for the main rolls and one for the pull rolls. But a solenoid is, an air solenoid is basically a electromagnetic valve. So when you apply electric to the magnet, it changes the airflow from up to down. The next thing is going to be the air cylinders themselves. You can see here we've got the one for the main roller and the one for the pull roller. So one end of the air cylinder is going to be attached to the roller bearing, and the other end is going to have an adjustment to allow you to even the roller pressure or nip. And then you're going to have some type of switch on the control panel that makes the rollers go up and down. And basically when you energize this switch, you're energizing the solenoid and changing the airflow from up to down. Now I do have a power applied to this machine and air, so you want to be real careful about not having any hands inside the machine. It's as simple as that. As far as common problems go, you don't always want to assume that your compressor is working right. It could be a problem with the machine, could be because the air pressure is not coming in properly. So you always want to check the source of the air. And the other problem is getting water in the system. So especially in very humid areas, the compressor can actually fill up with water and start pumping water through the machine. That's going to cause all kind of problems in your air system. So you want to check, make sure your air input is good, and also make sure that you're not getting any water in the system. Solenoids, you're either going to see one of two problems. Usually if it doesn't activate, you've either got some kind of safety problem with the machine, or you're not getting the 24 volts, the power that actuates the solenoid. The other problem is they stick. So over time, or if they get moisture in the system, they may want to stick on you. These particular ones on the Orca are kind of nice because they have a manual actuator on the bottom that will allow you to test it. And of course I've got the power removed from the machine while I'm doing this. That'll allow you to manually test those solenoids. As far as the air cylinders themselves, they can stick too if they get moisture in them, but the most common problem with those is leaks. So one easy way to check for a leak is, let's say that I put the roller in the down position. That means that the air is being applied to the top of the air cylinder. If I remove this hose from the bottom, I should not get any air coming out of that fitting right there. If I do, I've got a defective air cylinder. Also, if you're having a problem where this is not going up and down smoothly, you could have a mechanical problem within the guide where the roller goes up and down, and you could have a problem with lubrication. You don't usually have to apply a lot of lubrication to these machines, but if they've been used heavily, you may have to re-lubricate. And then of course, If you have a problem with the switch on the control panel, it's not going to apply power to the solenoid and cause the roller to go up and down. Again, a lot of times if the roller won't go up and down, you may have one of your safety interlocks giving you a problem. So one other thing to mention is that if you have a leak in a hose, obviously you're going to get problems related to that. Usually you can hear the leak. This one has no leaks, so we won't hear any hissing sound. You can also use soapy water to find if it's a tiny leak. As far as adjustments go, you'll notice on the air cylinders here, you've got what is called a flow control valve. So if your rollers are coming up and down unevenly, then you can adjust the rate of airflow going either up or down to make them come up nice and smooth and even together. The other adjustment is going to be on the top here. There's a collar, and you should be able to see, you can see easier on this one. This is what we call a Shim Dial. Okay, so that's going to be where we set for the thickness of material that we want to go through the machine. You don't want the, as far as the adjustment goes, you don't want it to be restricting the roller from coming down when you're at full pressure, but you need to have it set to where you get the right gap between the rollers on the left and right. One way to check that is when we have the roller down, this adjustment, or this shim dial, should be able to move if it's not restricting the roller from going down. Same components on the seal system. This is your water trap, and this one actually has a little gauge on the side to show you if there's water inside. And then there's a valve on the bottom that you unscrew. It's actually reverse threaded to drain the water out. Your air solenoid is right here. It's a slightly different style, but it works the same way. It gets energized and changes the airflow from up to down. One important thing to note about these machines is they are spring loaded to the up position for safety reasons. So if there is no power to the solenoid, the roller is going to go up. Then you're going to have your air cylinder that drives the roller up and down, and also there is no air cylinder for the back rollers on this machine. Seal uses a spring loaded design on this particular one. And then of course you're going to have a control panel switch that causes the rolls to go up and down. As far as common problems go, it's pretty much the same as the Orca. On this particular machine, a lot of solenoids get changed for no reason, or for the wrong reason, because air will be coming out of that solenoid and everybody thinks the solenoid is bad, but it's because one of the air cylinders has a leak in it and it's causing air to vent back through the solenoid. The only other difference here is your shim dial is actually up on top of the machine. There's your shim dial. One other thing to note here is these machines, from going up and down so many times, a lot of times you might find loose hardware. So before you start making adjustments and changing parts, you want to make sure that everything is tight and not moving around as it goes up and down. It should be smooth in both directions. Next type of pressure lift mechanism we're going to talk about is electrical. This is a Seal 62 Plus, and it uses an electric motor here to raise and lower the rollers. So you've got some large springs here that hold the roller pressure down, and then this motor operates a cam that will lift and lower the rollers by means of this arm here. And incidentally, on this machine it also lifts the pull rollers when it goes up. simple the way that works, going up and down on the cam. Again, you want to check for any loose hardware if it's not working properly. You also do have a sensor here that's connected to an arm, and as you raise and lower the roller, that senses the height of the roller and feeds back to the electronics within the machine to let you know where you're at as far as roll position. Now, as far as this unit goes, the biggest problem we have with the roller lift really has nothing to do with the roller lift mechanism itself. It's tied into the safety. So the machine has a photo eye to protect your hands while you're operating it, and it also has a table switch. If either one of those is activated, your rollers will not go up and down. And then, of course, you've got the associated electronics that make it operate. So if you can't resolve the problem by making adjustments or mechanical problem, you may have a problem with the electronics on the machine. The next system we're going to talk about for raising and lowering the rollers is the mechanical system. So this is the Falcon 60 Plus, and on this machine basically what they did was replace the air cylinder with a lever arm. So as you rotate the hand crank on the front of the machine, you can see that lever raises or lowers to raise and lower the roller. So it's just as simple as a mechanical lever arm attached to a cam wheel down at the bottom. Your pressure adjustment on here is this green spring, and you'll notice when the rollers are up, it should move freely, and as you start to apply pressure to the roller once they touch, then that spring is going to compress. You also do have a sensor back here that feeds back to your control panel and gives you a percentage of pressure adjustment. Now, this uses the hand crank lever. The pull rollers on the machine, which are the other set of rollers in the back, uses a screw mechanism to raise and lower the rollers. So I will show you that next. And incidentally, this chain does run quite loose on the machine, always has. The one we're going to look at now uses a lever to raise and lower the rollers. On this type of system, a lot of times the side cover of the machine is actually your shim settings. So as we raise and lower this, that's all the way down, and then you've got some settings in between for different thicknesses of substrate. And then I'll pull the cover off of there so you can see what's going on inside. So now I've taken off the cover and you can see what's going on inside there. You basically have a cam that's connected to this plate that lifts the rollers when you pull it in one direction, and then when you lower it, it engages these springs that give you the pressure on the rollers. Now, as far as the most common problems that I've seen with this system is basically just loose hardware. There's no electronics or electrical to it, but from operating this arm up and down, things are going to get loose. And as a matter of fact, I pulled this one out of my scrap heap, and this outer connection is loose, and I think probably that cam connection is loose inside there as well. So you'll have to go in there and tighten the set screws or whatever hardware is holding that in place. If you did need to make a pressure adjustment on here, you would make it here, but those are very sensitive, so I would make sure that everything's tight before I mess with those springs. And so I saved the best for last, or not the best. This is a Seal 62 Pro, and by far this lift mechanism has been the most problem for technicians out in the field over the years. And the reason why is because the springs in it they used a stacked spring, or this is actually called a Belleville type spring. It's a concaved spring that you just alternate back and forth to form the springs inside of there. And they're very touchy as far as the adjustment goes, but I'll show you how this works. It's very similar to the Falcon 60 Plus, except for instead of using a big lever arm, they've connected down at the bottom with an S-shaped bracket. But what makes this such a bear is that the adjustment for your spring is on the same shaft as the height adjustment, and they're very touchy. So again, I would recommend making sure all your hardware is tight and everything is working properly before I go messing with those adjustments. I've actually seen them where they're gotten so far out of whack that you can't get them to work right. Later on, Seal did switch to a real spring inside of this mechanism, and they did work a bit better, but still the setup for making the adjustments just makes it very touchy. So be careful before you get in there and start making adjustments.